We're in Mount Holly, New Jersey to take a historic walking tour with some extra stops. The tour is on Mount Holly's Historical Society's webpage. I will include numbers from the map and captions at the various attractions. St. Andrew's Episcopal Church received its royal charter from King George III in 1765 when Ben Franklin's son William was governor of New Jersey. The Friends Meeting House is from 1775 and is where Quakers gather for their religious meetings. British troops used this building as a commissary in 1778. Mount Holly has several murals along High Street. The historic courthouse, built in 1796, was designed by Samuel Lewis, the architect of Philadelphia's Congress Hall. This took over as Burlington County's courthouse after the one in Burlington City was determined to be beyond repair. It is still in use today. The historic prison was in continuous operation from 1811 to 1965 and is now a museum and National Historic Landmark. It was designed by Robert Mills, architect of the Washington Monument. Different sections were restored to different periods. Originally, most cells were designed for single inmates and had a fireplace, window, straw mattress, bed linens, a Bible, and a wooden bucket. These cells were considered more humane than earlier prison designs. This prison was one of the most advanced county prisons when it was built. These cell blocks in the basement were later used as a minimum security drunk tank. Selected inmate cooks slept in the kitchen and prepared meals for the other inmates until 1928. One meal per day was meat and vegetables, two others had cereal or grains. The prison workshop helped train inmates in trades such as making brooms, baskets, or shingles, which could support the inmate after getting released. This section is more modern, with cells connected together and a washroom at the end of the cell block. Multiple escape attempts occurred from this cell block, with 4 inmates escaping through a hole they made in the ceiling. A 5th inmate sounded the alarm after being left behind because he was too large to fit through the hole. Graffiti created by inmates has been preserved. We're in a common room that was used for meetings and prayer services. It was also used by debtors to work out arrangements with their lenders. The model of the SS St. Paul was built from scrap wood, metal, glass, and cigar boxes by an inmate who built this actual passenger liner, which was later used in the Spanish-American War and World War I. A maximum security cell was on the top floor for the most violent offenders. Some people say that it is haunted by a convicted murderer. Hangings were performed behind the prison until 1906. The Warden's Office. The Langstaff Mansion was built in a Greek Revival style in 1830 by Harriet and James Langstaff. In 1957, this mansion was acquired to be Mount Holly's library, housing the collections of the Library of Bridgeton, which had been formed in 1765. Burlington County purchased it in 2013, restored and made it into the county's Lyceum of History and Natural Sciences. The front parlor is filled with early to mid-19th century furniture, pottery, silverware, and lighting influenced by ancient Greeks and Roman styles. The carpet, drapes, and hand-painted frieze were inspired by historic styles typical in Greek Revival mansions of this age. The fine glasswork over the entranceway, crown molding, and detailed woodwork typify this period. History of the Rancocas Creek, which powered mills and enabled reliable transport to Philadelphia and beyond, was explained. Animal remains found in the area, including an American mastodon which went extinct in the last ice age, were displayed. Check back in 2026 for new exhibits at the Burlington County Lyceum. Nathan Dunn was disowned by the Quakers in 1816 and then moved to China for 13 years. The cottage he later built on his 23-acre estate is now used as a rectory for Sacred Heart Church. These 3 townhouses were built in 1833 in a combination of Greek Revival and Federal-style features by a group of brothers and sisters on land willed to them by their mother. Originally, all 3 buildings were 2 rooms deep. 242 High Street was once a college prep school for women. I don't have information on these other 19th century buildings on High Street, but I'm definitely impressed with the architecture and condition of these offices, homes, and apartments. Camden's Donkey's Place was founded in 1943 by Leon Lucas, a semi-pro boxer whose boxing name was Donkey because of how hard he hit. After hearing that Anthony Bourdain pronounced Camden's Donkey's Place cheesesteak as the best in the Philly area, I wanted to try it, but since Mount Holly is easier to get to, we gave this Donkey's Place location a try. The roll is definitely not the traditional one for cheesesteaks, but the flavor was fantastic, especially compared to a disappointing recent visit to a famous cheesesteak place on South Street in Philly. Millrace Village is Mount Holly's oldest community. It was first settled in 1677 along a hand-dug waterway to the Rancocas built to power the mills. It now has an eclectic collection of shops, a coffee house, and a recognized restaurant. This building was used as a city hall and jail in the early 1900s. These buildings date back to the 18th and 19th centuries. Several buildings had signs such as the horse in front of the red building. This sign discusses hills and creeks in the Mount Holly area that have changed over the years. This coffee shop was originally built as a house around 1773. The porch is the only significant addition. The sign used to say "Coffee or Die," but was changed for legal reasons. Michael Ernest was a husbandman. This house was patterned after an English cottage when it was built in 1747. A famous early owner was High Sheriff Joseph Mullen, who acquired it in 1765. It wasn't long after Halloween when we visited. Thomas Budd built this house around 1744. It is the earliest known residence on its original site in Mount Holly. Mount Holly has a troll named Retlaw that was created by Julia Park and Adam Pietras. Retlaw is a troll in a garden and enjoys bringing smiles to all who admire his greenery. Additional shops and parking are down White Street. This is the oldest continuously active volunteer fire company in the United States. It was organized in 1752 as the Britannia Fire Company. The present building dates from 1892. The Three Tons Tavern was built around 1723. It likely was visited by British troops during the Revolutionary War, but it's not open now and Google did not provide much useful information. Mill Street in Mount Holly has interesting architecture and nice ambiance, but several storefronts are vacant and a couple of cannabis dispensaries moved in. This fountain was placed here in 1878. It may have come from the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia 2 years earlier. Organized on July 9, 1814 as the Farmers Bank of New Jersey, this is the first bank in Mount Holly and one of the first in South Jersey. It was built in 1815 in a federal style and had 2 later additions. A historical sign on Washington Street discusses prominent citizens in the late 1700s and an incident that took place in 1776 when British and Hessian troops chased the American militia through this intersection. Signs for ice cutting and storage operations from the early 20th century. The Union Fire Company No. 2 was formed in 1802. This building is now a live music venue with local, regional, and national acts. This gristmill stone was the only true tangible artifact recovered from the historic industrial park at Mill and Pine Street. The park was built in 1796 and destroyed by fire in 1910. This early settler's log house of hand-hewn logs was entirely cased in a house on Water Street, now Rancocas Road, and was recovered in 1967 when the surrounding house was demolished. It is now owned by Mount Holly Township and maintained by the Mount Holly Historical Society as a museum. That's all for this visit to Mount Holly. Thanks for staying until the end. Please hit like and subscribe to see more of my content and to help it get shared.